Hey there besties! Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're continuing our recap of the manhwa, Marriage of Convenience. If you're new to this series, check the description below for links to previous episodes. Lastly, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy the video. It really helps our channel grow. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. Are you taking her ladyship to Laos in the hopes of begetting an heir? Sova asked. Zachary's calm demeanor faltered as Bianca's earlier words echoed in his mind. I'm going to have your baby. The memory made his face flush with embarrassment. That's not something I wish to discuss, Zachary replied, his voice nearly stumbling. The trip has nothing to do with that. Sova raised an eyebrow but quickly backed off, sipping his tea. What did I say wrong to make him so flustered? He thought. His lordship is intimidating when he's upset. I'd best stop asking questions. So, that's what you wanted to discuss with her ladyship? That she'll accompany you to the capital in spring? Robert interjected, dabbing his mouth with a handkerchief. No, that's not it, Zachary replied firmly. I only mentioned that I needed to speak with her about our departure plans. Pardon? Robert blinked. I didn't think I needed to inform her immediately since we're not leaving right away, Zachary clarified. The three knights exchanged tense glances. Her ladyship might not want to go, they all thought, unsure of Zachary's confidence in her agreement. Meanwhile, Bianca, unaware of her husband's haphazard plans, had shaken off her fever and resumed learning the intricacies of household management. At dawn, Vincent stood in the chilly air, holding the castle's records and waiting patiently. His posture stiffened when a voice from behind called out, Sorry I'm late, Vincent. Turning, he saw Bianca, dressed in a thick sweater, flanked by Yvonne and Gaspard. Madam, good morning. Vincent greeted, masking his surprise. It took me longer to prepare than I realized, Bianca said as they approached. You've bundled up thoroughly against the cold, madam, Vincent noted. Do you think it's too much? Bianca asked. Not at all. I didn't realize you were so sensitive to the cold. If I'd known you'd be bedridden with a fever for days, I'd have bought more than just that fox fur coat. Yvonne added, her tone anxious. Let's go, Bianca said briskly, cutting Yvonne off as they set out to oversee the countship. The countship of Arno is mostly flatlands. This area, along with the hill the castle is built on, marks the territory's highest points, Vincent explained as they strolled. To the east lies a dense forest and a river. We're fortunate that the land is well suited for farming, husbandry, and forestry. Bianca nodded, her expression calm, though her thoughts were elsewhere. I didn't care a whit about Arno's geography in my past life, she reflected, watching Vincent. He told me about this area just once back then. Her mind wandered to that day in her past life, shortly after the Count had fallen in battle. It was the day she was cast out of Arno by Viscount Hughes, the Count's brother. Alone and weeping on a desolate street corner, Vincent had approached her in secret. Walk directly east from here, he had whispered. You'll come upon a forest. Follow the path for about 10 days, and you'll reach land owned by a household with connections to the House of Blanchefort. She had walked barefoot for days and nights, her exhaustion mingled with a bitter gratitude for the flat terrain. I loathed this vast acreage when my circumstances were dire, she mused, her thoughts returning to the present. Let me adjust your clothes for you, madam, Yvonne said gently, stepping forward to help. Bianca's face flushed slightly, but her gaze remained on the sprawling landscape. Now that I view this land with a resolve to survive, it seems splendid indeed, she thought. It's beautiful, she said aloud, her tone cheerful. Yvonne smiled, relieved to see her mistress in good spirits. After Vincent finished describing the territory from their vantage point, he led Bianca to the seamstress's quarters. He must have remembered her curiosity about the place during a previous conversation. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of fabric and dye. Vincent began explaining the intricate embroidery used on clothing and banners, but their attention was momentarily diverted. From a corner of the room, two women whispered loud enough to be overheard. So that's the Countess, her? I heard she thrashed Auntie, the girl who works at the castle, and threw her out, one said. Really? I heard her ladyship is scrawny and ugly, the second woman replied, eyeing Bianca. But look at her, she's not scrawny at all. She's got some girth to her. No wonder Auntie's face swelled up like a loaf of bread after being smacked around by someone that size. Yvonne stiffened, her cheeks flushing with indignation. Madam is such a petite woman. She only looks bulkier because of the layers of clothing I insisted she wear today. Her gaze flickered nervously toward Bianca. Did she hear them? Bianca's expression didn't betray her thoughts, but Yvonne couldn't help but feel anxious as she watched her mistress. That embroidery over there, who worked on it, and how long did it take? Bianca asked, pointing to a fabric on display, her demeanor unaffected by the whispers outside. It was me, madam, a seamstress replied nervously. It took about 4 days, and I'm still finishing it. Come see me tomorrow, Bianca said curtly before turning to exit the seamstress quarters. Where to next, Vincent? She asked, picking up her pace. Madam, please slow down. Vincent called as he hurried to keep up. The seamstress, left behind, trembled under the watchful eyes of her colleagues. But why? Did I do something wrong? She wondered anxiously. Bianca remained composed, her thoughts elsewhere. That black-haired seamstress has a skillful hand. She works quickly too, which means she'll be easy to teach, she thought, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. The next stops are the meat storage and the chandlery, Vincent announced, pulling her focus back. There's a chandlery on our territory? Bianca asked, her excitement evident. They reached the meat storage first. Here, we produce and store salted meat for the winter, Vincent explained. We handle the slaughtering ourselves, which also provides a substantial amount of animal fat. That's enough. Where's the chandlery? Bianca interrupted, her attention already shifting. Vincent pointed toward a nearby building. As they approached, Bianca thought, I didn't realize the place where they make candles was so close. Candles were a luxury at the Abbey, rarely given out. I'll study the process carefully. Inside the chandlery, the air carried the faint tang of melted fat. The chandler demonstrated the process. This is lard, he explained, dipping a wick into the heated fat. You repeatedly dip the wick to build up the candle's thickness. Feel it for yourself, madam, he offered, handing her a finished candle. Bianca sniffed the candle and wrinkled her nose. This doesn't smell like the ones in my room. The scent is overpowering. It's the material, the chandler explained. The candles in your chambers, his lordship's chambers, and the dining room are made of beeswax, which has a milder scent and creates less soot. Beeswax is a premium material, harvested only in spring when bees produce honey. Its limited availability makes it expensive, which is why it's typically used in royal palaces or for religious ceremonies. Bianca frowned, her voice sharp. Are you saying you're using such precious items because of me? Why didn't anyone tell me earlier? If I'd known, I would have used them more sparingly. Not at all, madam, Vincent replied, alarmed. His lordship specifically ordered beeswax candles for any room you might frequent. That's enough for today, Bianca said abruptly, turning on her heel. You were cold to me in my past life, Vinny. I'll give you a hard time whenever I can now. Despite her thoughts, she looked satisfied. As they walked, Bianca accidentally kicked a wooden box, startling at the loud thud. What was that? She asked, alarmed. Gaspard stepped forward and carefully opened the lid. Inside was a boy, clutching a knife with a bleeding finger. Who are you? Bianca demanded, her gaze sharp as she took in the worried expression of the child. The child looked frightened, trembling as Gaspard lifted him out of the box. Nicola? Why were you in there? The chandler exclaimed, his voice sharp. Get behind me, madam, Yvonne said, quickly stepping in front of Bianca to shield her. Why, Yvonne? Bianca stuttered, confused. That's a knife. Did someone send this child to attack me with it? She thought, her eyes darting to the boy's trembling hands and the small blade he clutched, stained faintly with his blood. My goodness, sir, the chandler interjected. This boy is my fellow chandler's son. He must have been up to his usual foolishness, hiding because he was afraid of being scolded. Please forgive him for holding the knife, it won't happen again. Nicola's tears streamed down his face as he remained frozen in Gaspard's grip. Then again, he probably couldn't do much harm with such a tiny knife, Bianca mused. Put the boy down, Sir Gaspard. He's hurt his hand. Yvonne, please tend to his injury. Thank you, madam. I'm so very grateful, the chandler said with a bow as Gaspard gently set Nicola down. Yvonne knelt to examine the boy's injured hand. Tell me, what do you mean by his usual foolishness? Do you know what he does when he's hiding from you? Bianca asked, her tone calm but firm. Well, the chandler began hesitantly, he mars the candles so badly they're rendered useless. Curious, Bianca approached the box to see for herself. To her surprise, she found a candle adorned with an intricately carved angel. Useless? Are you referring to this? She asked, holding up the candle. Oh my goodness. Why would he hack up the candles into such a mess? Vincent exclaimed, visibly distressed. I wasn't trying to wreck it, Nicola said in a small, tense voice. I saved the divine. In my dream last night, they told me they were trapped in the candle, suffocating. They asked me to rescue them, so I carved into it until I set them free. Bianca studied Nicola carefully as Yvonne finished wrapping his injured hand. Has this child ever been taught to sculpt? She asked, turning to the chandler. Of course not, madam, the chandler replied. His late father was a chandler, and his mother is a maid. He was born into a poor household and is expected to follow in his father's footsteps. But instead, he indulges in this habit of ruining candles. Vincent leaned closer to Bianca and whispered, Madam, sometimes a single real-life lesson is more valuable than countless theories. While it may seem insignificant, the candle is property belonging to Arno. The boy used it for a personal endeavor, which is technically no different from theft. You should admonish him firmly and make an example of him to ensure such behavior isn't repeated. Bianca glared at Nicola, her piercing gaze causing him to flinch in fear. This is Madame Bianca, the one everyone's been talking about. I heard she beat a maid from the castle just a few days ago. What if she beats me like that too? Nicola thought, trembling. You, Bianca said sternly, her voice sharp and commanding. Yes, madam, he stuttered, his voice shaky with fear. I want you to come see me sometime tomorrow, she said curtly, turning on her heel to leave. Let's go, she added, her tone leaving no room for argument. Pardon. Madam. Vincent called out, scrambling to keep up with her as they exited the shop. A single real-life example is crucial. Are you even listening, madam? He pleaded, but Bianca paid him no mind. Nicola burst into tears, overwhelmed. What do I do, mister? I'm so scared, he wailed as the chandler pulled him into a comforting embrace. That's how the long first day of household management lessons came to an end. The next morning, two individuals arrived at the castle, both summoned by Madame Bianca. They had decided it was best to get any scolding out of the way as early as possible. Nicola and the seamstress exchanged uncertain glances, each wondering why they had been called. Suddenly, the castle's front doors opened. You two arrived at the same time. Welcome. I'll take you to her ladyship, Yvonne greeted them with a cheerful smile. She led them through the grand hallway, her light steps echoing against the marble floor. Excuse me. Thank you for treating my finger yesterday, Nicola said, breaking the silence as he hurried to match her pace. I washed your handkerchief last night, but it's not completely dry yet. I'll bring it to you later, he added shyly. You should thank her ladyship, not me, Yvonne replied kindly. She's the one who told me to treat your hand, and the handkerchief actually belongs to her. What? Nicola asked, his eyes wide with surprise. Her dresses don't have pockets, so I carry it around for her, Yvonne explained. She also said she hopes your wound heals properly and doesn't leave a scar. She did. Nicola stammered, clearly taken aback. Of course, Yvonne replied, her smile warm and reassuring. As they rounded a bend in the corridor, a maid appeared suddenly and bumped into Yvonne, sending her sprawling to the floor. Startled, Yvonne looked up to see the maid glaring coldly at her. Traitor, the maid hissed before walking past as though nothing had happened. The seamstress and Nicola stood frozen in shock, while Yvonne sat on the floor, visibly shaken. She knew all too well that Auntie, the maid who had been dismissed recently, had many friends within and outside the castle. Rumors had spread among Auntie's friends that Madame Bianca was the reason for her dismissal, making Yvonne a target of animosity for her association with Bianca. Are you okay? Nicola asked nervously, placing a tentative hand on her shoulder. Yes, I'm fine, Yvonne replied, shaking herself out of her daze. I should have been paying more attention while walking. Luckily, being healthy is my specialty, so I wasn't hurt at all. She dusted herself off and stood up, forcing a cheerful smile. Let's go, Madam is waiting. She led them to Bianca's study. You're here early. I see you two are quite diligent, Bianca remarked as she turned to them. I told you to come see me sometime today, but I didn't expect you this early. The seamstress and Nicola couldn't help but blink in surprise. The woman before them looked entirely different from the figure they'd seen the day before. Without her coat, Bianca's demeanor and appearance seemed sharper, more refined. Would you say you're a tight-lipped person? Bianca asked, her tone serious as she addressed the seamstress. Yes, my lady. I've often been told that I'm quite reserved, the seamstress answered quickly. Good. You mustn't tell anyone about the designs I'm about to show you until I give you permission, Bianca instructed. I'll be teaching you to tat lace, and I expect you to produce as many pieces as you can within a week. She handed the seamstress a sheet of paper with intricate patterns. Yes, my lady, the seamstress said, bowing as she accepted the designs, though inwardly she was puzzled. What exactly is lace? She wondered. And you, Bianca said, turning her attention to Nicola, making him flinch. You've been using Arno's candles to make sculptures as you please, haven't you? She asked. Vincent tells me that thieves often lose a hand as punishment for their crimes. But considering your young age, I've decided on a different punishment. A different punishment. Nicola stammered, trembling. Bianca opened a chest, revealing a collection of exquisite candles. Madam, these are, Nicola exclaimed, startled by the sight of the finely crafted beeswax candles. You recognize them immediately, don't you? That's proof enough that you're a chandler's son, Bianca said. These are beeswax candles of the highest quality. Your punishment is to sculpt them however you like, but you must return the finished products to me. Once you finish one, I'll inform Vincent so you can receive a new candle. Nicola stared at her in disbelief. This isn't a punishment, madam, it's a reward. Why would you give something so precious to someone like me? I was so sure you'd throw me out of the territory, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Bianca regarded him silently for a moment before smiling. Do you two know what an investment is? She asked, addressing both Nicola and the seamstress. They shook their heads, signaling that they didn't. It's the act of putting time and resources into something in order to reap benefits later, she explained. I'm choosing to invest in your talents, the very talents that allow you to create beautiful and valuable things. I intend to do business with those creations. She leaned back in her chair, a faint smirk playing on her lips as she watched the two process her words. Lace, a beautiful and lightweight handcrafted item created by weaving thread together. In time, lace would become a symbol of elegance in Severn and its neighboring countries, enhancing the richness of clothing and defining high fashion. The origin of lace production would later be attributed to Arno, with Countess Bianca de Arno recognized as the one who taught the first seamstresses to tat lace. At the time, however, no one could have foreseen Arno's rise as the center of lace production. In the present, Vincent trembled as he reviewed the budget Countess Bianca had presented to him. Madam, the quantity of flax thread listed here, is this truly correct? He asked, his voice shaking. And what do you mean by giving the Chandler boy unlimited access to beeswax candles? Didn't you see the candle Nicola carved? We've witnessed talent, Vincent. I'm certain of it, Bianca replied calmly, her gaze unwavering. But, madam, isn't it too extravagant to hand such costly materials to a child as if they were toys? Vincent protested. Bianca tilted her head slightly. Beautiful and expensive things bring me joy, so I've never had that thought cross my mind. As for the flax thread, give it to the seamstress. We'll need more in the future, so I'd like you to procure as much as possible. With that, she cheerfully added, now, off you go, and promptly shut the door behind him. Outside, Vincent stood still, his emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Tears welled up in his eyes as he muttered to himself, Madam's spending habits are going back to the old days. It's no longer heavy, light, medium, heavy. It's just heavy, heavy all over again. He sniffled, wiped his face, and walked away with resignation. In the maids' quarters, Yvonne frantically tried to extinguish a small fire that had burned her coat. She stared at the damaged fabric in dismay. What do I do? This is the only winter outfit I own, she murmured sadly as she picked up the charred remains of her dress. Nearby, two maids snickered, their voices dripping with mockery. You should have taken better care of your things, one said. She probably didn't think something like this would happen, the other chimed in. If she's going to betray a colleague, she ought to be smarter about it. Well, it's clear why she's stuck with that nasty madam. She's too much of a dullard to do anything else, the first maid said, laughing. Yvonne remained silent, letting their words wash over her. Madam tires of everything so quickly, one of the maids added. It's only a matter of time before she throws Yvonne out. Just wait and see. Yvonne examined her coat again. I don't think I can repair this. I guess I have no choice but to throw it away, she said softly. Her closest friend, standing nearby, sighed and said, I'm sorry, Yvonne. You've been through so much, and I haven't been able to help at all. I mean, I'm the one who brought the switch and called head butler Vincent that day. I know you're staying by Madam's side because she reminds you of your sister, but this is awful. The friend removed her coat and held it out. Here, wear mine. You might catch a cold. No, I'm fine, Yvonne said, shaking her head. You have to work in the hallway all day. You'll need it more than me. She smiled faintly. Being healthy is my specialty. I can handle this cold weather just fine. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, but she turned away with quiet resolve. Soon, Yvonne found herself outside with Bianca. She shivered in the cold, her thin clothing doing little to keep her warm. Your clothes seem to be getting thinner with each passing day, Yvonne, Bianca observed, glancing at her trembling frame. I was rather clumsy and accidentally burned one of my outfits, Yvonne replied, forcing a smile. But don't worry, madam. I'm so healthy I've never caught a cold before. Bianca studied her briefly. Come to think of it, there's that grey squirrel fur coat I bought some time ago. I haven't worn it in a while. Oh, I'm sure it's still around. Squirrel fur is nice, but the sable coat suits you so much better, madam. It's more luxurious and fitting, Yvonne said, sniffling slightly. Yes, you're right, Bianca agreed. I suppose I won't be wearing the squirrel coat anymore. Will you take it off my hands, Yvonne? Yvonne blinked in surprise. Me, madam. Bianca nodded. I even bought a fox fur coat this year. You may wear the squirrel coat or dispose of it as you like. But I'd prefer you wear it. I want you to stay healthy while by my side. Madam, could she be worrying about me? Yvonne thought, her cheeks flushing. She accepted the coat quickly, slipping it on. How does it look? It suits you, Bianca said with a small smile. Is it uncomfortable or too small? Not at all, madam. It's warm and comfortable. Yvonne replied enthusiastically. Good. I wouldn't feel at ease otherwise. I must ensure my maid is dressed appropriately, Bianca said. Now, let's go. Vinny must be waiting. Yes, madam. Yvonne said, beaming as she followed. Her heart swelled with pride. Madam called me her maid. I'll treasure this coat and pass it down through generations, she thought, feeling deeply moved. Nearby, Gaspard watched them quietly. It looks good on her, he thought, following behind. When they met Vincent, Bianca turned to him. Where will we be touring today? She asked. The pastures, madam, he replied. Pastures? Do you let the sheep graze in the winter? Bianca asked as they walked. The sheep and cattle are fed hay harvested in the fall, Vincent explained. But the horses graze all winter. His lordship ordered us to raise them in such a way that they can withstand even the harshest cold. So, Arno's horses must be quite hardy, Bianca remarked. That's good to know. If I'm ever cast out of the castle again, her thoughts trailed off, and she frowned. I shouldn't let my mind go there. I promised myself I wouldn't get thrown out this time. Old habits truly die hard, she thought, clenching her dress as they climbed higher ground. Madam, look over there. Vincent pointed toward a distant field. Bianca paused, marveling at the sight of horses galloping freely. Among them, Zachary rode at the forefront, guiding the herd. The Count? Is he herding the horses himself? She wondered, her brows furrowing. He should leave that to the lower-ranking knights. And what is he doing with his shirt undone in this freezing weather? She watched him, her thoughts briefly silenced. Zachary rode with such ease, as if the horses were an extension of himself. Bianca couldn't take her eyes off him. The Count. He looks so free, she thought, her face warming despite the cold. How I envy that freedom of his. Bianca lingered for a moment, watching Zachary. What was it you told me? That Arno castle belongs to both of us? You can say that because you're free, but that's still a long way off for me, my lord, she thought before resuming her walk with Vincent. It was only later that Bianca realized the envy and jealousy she felt in that moment stemmed from an inferiority complex. She was just beginning to grasp the basics of managing the household, while Zachary had been leading the territory confidently for years. Meanwhile, in the stables, Sova was tending to the horses as they fed. Good morning, friends. Daddy Sova is here to give you a nice brushing, he said cheerfully, carrying a bucket filled with brushes. His lordship is setting your friends out to graze in my place today. Lucky me, it's freezing outside. He set the bucket on the ground and turned to a small pony. Well, aren't you the cutest little thing? Were you staying warm and cozy with your mother? Daddy Sova is going to be the very first person to brush your baby coat, he cooed, kissing the pony's snout affectionately. Your coat is such a beautiful color. Hurry up and grow into a brave, mighty horse so we can roam the battlefields together. As he brushed the pony, Sova continued, his tone turning serious. Now listen, you're part of the Black Wolf Battalion of Arno, so you can't promise your heart to just any horse out there, got it? If you want a boyfriend, you'll need to consider his breed, age, and even his parents. Be it human or horse, a family tree is of the utmost importance, he said with a laugh. Unbeknownst to him, Bianca stood behind him, quietly observing his antics. Sova, she called. Startled, he froze mid-laugh and turned, his cheeks flushing red. My lady. How long have you been standing there? He stammered, falling to the ground in embarrassment. I'll pretend I didn't see that, Bianca said flatly. Just finish whatever you were doing. As Bianca watched him, Sova's thoughts raced. What brings her ladyship to the stables? She's been touring the territory lately, but this is unusual. When Bianca was younger, she had always been the kind of person who expressed her displeasure with her entire being. Even when she first arrived in Arno after marrying Zachary, she'd cry or throw a tantrum. I hope she doesn't notice I only did a cursory cleaning today, Sova thought, looking tensed. Just then, a horse licked Yvonne's face, startling her. She stepped back and accidentally bumped into Gaspard, who caught her before she fell. Oh, she exclaimed, her face turning red as she glanced at him. Are you all right, Yvonne? Bianca asked as Gaspard helped her stand. Yes, madam. I was just a little startled, Yvonne replied. She turned to Gaspard. Thank you, sir. Bianca's attention shifted to the stables. There are still quite a few horses here, she noted. That's correct, madam, Vincent replied. The first thing his lordship did upon gaining power was to purchase war horses. Arno likely has the largest cavalry in all of Severn. Bianca scanned the horses thoughtfully. I once heard that a single war horse costs as much as a house. How many houses are we talking about here? There were people who mocked his lordship for spending so much on horses, Vincent continued. But after losing to him in battle, they had their own horses seized by the Arno army. His lordship has participated in countless wars since a young age and knows the value of mobility on the battlefield. He even herds the horses himself, even on a cold day like this. His lordship truly is remarkable, Sova added, his eyes shining with pride. Bianca's gaze lingered on the horses. By any chance, would it be possible for me to ride one of these horses? She asked, catching both Vincent and Sova off guard. What? You want to ride a war horse? Sova exclaimed, his expression stunned. Horses are far too dangerous, madam, Yvonne interjected, alarmed. Have you learned to ride, my lady? Sova asked cautiously. No, but I can learn, can't I? Bianca replied, her tone uncertain but determined. War horses have a completely different temperament from ordinary steeds. They're intelligent and sensitive creatures, and they can rear back fiercely when an unfamiliar rider mounts them. While there are aristocratic ladies who learn to ride for the sake of refinement, Vincent explained, you must get permission from his lordship if you want to take lessons. I have to get his permission for something as trivial as that? Bianca thought, feeling slightly exasperated. Very well. I'll ask him to permit me to receive riding lessons, she said, trying to sound composed. Yes, madam, Vincent replied, bowing. I'm not sure if that stubborn man would allow it, though. I lost the last time because he had a better argument, so I'm not too confident about this. Bianca looked tense as she processed his words. In any case, thanks for your hard work. If I do get permission from my husband to learn horseback riding, I suppose I'll be seeing you more often. She offered a calm smile. I look forward to working with you when the day comes. She gently stroked the pony's mane. I'll see you again next time, my little friend, she said softly before leaving the stables with her companions. Sova stood still processing what had just happened. Sova? What are you doing just standing out here in the cold? Robert asked, carrying a load of hay as he approached. So her ladyship and her posse came by for a visit just now, Sova said. My image of her ladyship was that of a rather prickly woman, so I thought she'd complain about how dingy and smelly the stable is and tell me to stay well away from her. But she might actually be a better person than I thought, he said, his face lighting up. Are you being sincere? Robert asked, confused. They say those who are kind to animals and children are good people. Sova exclaimed. She called this little one friend. He pointed to the pony. She wasn't intimidated in the midst of all those war horses and asked point blank if she could ride any of them. She's a true aristocrat, all right. There's no doubt about that. I think I'm smitten. I like confident, headstrong women, he added, confusing Robert even more. Her ladyship wanted to try riding a war horse? What in the world is happening in Arno? Robert thought. That night, in her room, Yvonne warmed Bianca's bed. Yvonne, you're still here? Bianca asked as she stepped in from her bath, towel in hand as she dried her hair. I just warmed up your bed so that it's nice and toasty. Shall I dry your hair, madam? Yvonne asked politely. It's all right. You may go now. You must be tired from today, so you should get some rest, Bianca replied. Yes, madam. Have a good night, Yvonne said cheerfully, smiling. Good night. I'll see you tomorrow, Bianca replied, bidding her farewell. Once Yvonne left, Bianca eagerly snuggled under the warm sheets. Ah, it's so warm. I love snuggling in the blankets with my half-dry hair out, she said, feeling content. Okay, let's look over the homework she turned in, Bianca thought, reaching for the lace that the seamstress had made. She did a very pretty job at tatting this. Maybe she can even come up with new designs. It would be wonderful if she could teach the other seamstresses how to tat lace. Bianca's thoughts drifted as she nodded off, the lace falling off her bed. A slight knock at her door stirred her from her sleep. Did someone knock just now? Bianca thought, still drowsy. Then, she felt someone drying her hair. Someone is patting my hair dry. When I went to bed with my hair still wet as a child, Jean would dry it for me. Who is this kind person? She turned to see who it was and was momentarily surprised to see Zachary drying her hair. Darling, what are you doing here? She asked, both their faces flushing. Why is the Count in my room at this hour? Bianca thought as Zachary leaned forward. This sort of thing never happened until I was 21 in my previous life. Did he change his mind because I kept prodding him about an heir? If that's the case, I better make it happen while I've got the chance, she thought, her eyes shining as her cheeks turned flushed. She grabbed him by his shirt, quickly placing him on the bed as she got on top him. His eyes were opened in amazement as he watched her. I did it. What do I do next? Bianca thought, leaning forward, their both hearts racing, faces flushed. Calm down, Bianca. Your body may be younger than his, but your mind is almost 10 years older. It's okay. You can do it, Bianca, she thought, shaking a bit as she leaned closer, her hands holding Zachary's face gently as their lips drew closer. Suddenly, Zachary pushed her gently as he got out from her bed, standing beside her, shocking her as she lay still. I apologize for startling you. I came by to ask you a question, but I saw that you'd fallen asleep with your hair still wet. I mean, it would be very difficult for you if you caught another cold, so I was just going to dry it as fast as possible and leave, he said, sounding a bit shy as he quickly turned his back, his hand scratching his hair. I was much faster in my imagination, but the Count in real life is much quicker, Bianca thought, looking angry as she bit her lips in frustration. So what is it? What did you want to ask me at this late hour? She asked angrily, sitting up as she hit her bed hard. Well, what do you think of Gaspard? He asked gently. Why are you suddenly asking about him? She asked, looking unsure. Did you have any difficulties with him while he was with you the past few days? He asked. Why do you even ask? It's not like you're going to withdraw your guard just because I'm uncomfortable around him. I'm sure you only feel at ease when someone's with me. He does stick out like a sore thumb wherever we go because of his size, but otherwise, he's been doing a very good job, she said. Is that so? He's doing a good job, huh? Zachary asked, folding his arms. What's this? He asked me how Gaspard was, and I told him he's fine. So why does he look so displeased? But anyway, my neck aches. I have to crane my neck way back to look at you because you're so uselessly tall, my lord, she thought, watching his reaction. Dear, she called, stunning him as his eyes opened in amazement. Zachary turned his gaze gently towards her, looking unsure. Were you calling me just now? He asked. Who else? I actually have a question for you too. So, will you sit next to me and listen to what I have to say? She said, patting on the bed. Zachary was brief for a moment before complying, seating next to her. He's going to sit with his back to me? Bianca thought, noticing Zachary's silence as he positioned himself away from her. Then again, I'm surprised he did as I asked without complaint. She cleared her throat. Vinny may have mentioned this to you already, but I'd like your permission to learn horseback riding, she said, her voice steady. My family, the Blancheforts, are a household of knights, and you're a knight too. I heard noble ladies sometimes learn to ride as a way to cultivate refinement. Don't you think a warrior's wife should definitely know how to ride a horse? She explained, meeting his gaze. Horseback riding is an arduous exercise that requires strength. It would be difficult for you, he said, causing her to bristle. This man. He's treating me like a child again, she thought. You told me to let Vinny know if I wanted anything, didn't you? Well, what I want right now is to learn horseback riding. And you say it would be difficult for me, but that doesn't mean it's impossible, she said, her voice rising with frustration. I suppose you're right, Zachary replied calmly. However, it would be better to learn in early spring rather than during the winter, and ponies are rarely available in the market during this time. Would you be willing to wait until I procure a pony for you? Bianca's expression softened. Of course, she said, nodding gently. Then I shall inform Vincent so that you can begin learning to ride starting in early spring, he told her. I successfully convinced the Count. Bianca thought inwardly, a wave of victory washing over her. I'm so excited. She smiled widely, but as she looked at Zachary, she suddenly realized what she had done. Oops, I didn't even realize I was expressing my joy so openly. He'll probably think I'm acting like a child again, she thought, quickly composing herself. Bianca thought, noticing the silence from Zachary as he kept his back to her. Does he hate seeing me smile that much? She felt a wave of sadness wash over her. Then again, that sounds about right when I think about it. He was never interested in me. I'm just an object of business he acquired at a high price, still just a child failing at my duty. Of course, he doesn't care what I do. She clenched the bedsheet, her gaze growing distant. The first prince's son, Prince Albert, has an engagement ceremony coming up, and I must go to Lahoz in late spring, Zachary said, his voice steady and distant. I see, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. That's right. The same thing happened in my previous life. In the spring of my 20th year, the Count was absent from the castle for quite some time, she thought, feeling a pang in her chest. There will also be frequent events in the coming summer to celebrate the 50th anniversary of His Majesty's accession. It's a long journey to Lahoz, so I will be staying there for an extended period of time. I believe I'll return to Arno in the fall or early winter, he continued, still not facing her. I see, Bianca murmured, her face falling. I'll be living the same life again. The Count will die on the battlefield before I can give him an heir. I'll be cast out from the countship without my dowry. My life will be filled with regret until the very end, and I'll be coughing up blood as I meet my demise. I'll forever be shunned as Bianca, the wicked wife of Arno. Why did I even come back here if I'm just going to repeat the same thing all over again? Her thoughts spiraled, and her eyes grew teary. Bianca, Zachary called gently, but she didn't hear him. Bianca, he repeated, causing her to flinch as she was brought back to reality. What is it? She asked, wiping her eyes quickly. I was originally going to ask you right before I left, he began, his tone calm and thoughtful. But I know you have your own plans, and I didn't want to make a decision for you without your input. I understand your days have been very busy in Arno lately, but, would you like to accompany me to Lahoz? His words left Bianca frozen, gazing at him in surprise. If there is a shape to a person's heart, it probably starts out as a hunk of hard, colorless glass. But since that night, Madame Bianca and his lordship's hearts slowly began to take on a warmer hue, transforming into something much more pliable. Would you like to accompany me to Lahoz? Zachary asked politely. You want me to go with you? Bianca replied, her voice tinged with uncertainty. The capital will be livelier than usual because of Prince Albert's engagement and the 50th anniversary of His Majesty's accession, he explained. You have a good eye for art and furniture. I think you'd enjoy looking around Lahoz, with its vast array of high-quality goods. As their hands brushed briefly, Bianca couldn't help but think how significant this offer was. Lahoz, the heart of the continent, where all industries converge. He's willing to take me there, she thought. I'll go with you. I want to go, she said, her voice firm with resolve. Bianca recalled her conversation with Yvonne from her past life, where she had emphasized the importance of a territory lord's wife remaining loyal to her land. But this offer from Zachary felt different, one that could change everything, even if it meant leaving everything else behind. She knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The next morning, the knights gathered before Zachary in his study. "I apologize for my tardiness. I was speaking with the aides about the supplies we'll need for our journey to the capital," Robert said as he entered the room. "Good morning, Robert," Sova greeted. Robert noticed Vincent's uneasy look. "Did something happen, head butler Vincent?" he asked. "Madame Bianca announced this morning that she'll be taking a break from her household management lessons," Vincent explained. "I had organized a whole catalogue of things she was supposed to learn, but now she won't see it." Robert glanced at the thick book in Vincent's hand, a hint of concern in his expression. When you look closely at him, you can tell he doesn't understand moderation, Robert thought, feeling a bit tense. Vincent's mind wandered back to Bianca's words. "I've decided to focus on something else for now. You know more about household management than I do, so I'd like you to continue managing the household. No matter what others say, the king of household management in Arno is you, Vincent." Bianca had smiled brightly at him, giving him a thumbs up. Vincent's face flushed at the memory. Goodness. The king of household management. "That softened the blow when she told me," he said, still a little flustered. "Maybe she just doesn't want to do it anymore," Sova suggested. "No, it's not that. She's been working with the seamstress on something, and she said that task needs to be completed before spring," Vincent explained. "Spring? Why does she need to finish it by then?" Robert asked, confused. "Because she plans to go to Lajos in the spring," Vincent replied, surprising Robert. "What? Her ladyship wants to go to the capital?" Robert exclaimed. "Apparently so," Sova said, unconcerned. Meanwhile, Zachary remained still, his gaze fixed on the window. "Does that mean Gaspar will continue as her ladyship's guard?" Sova asked, still munching on his snacks. "Bianca told me he's been doing well. I'll keep him on unless something happens," Zachary said calmly. "Well, if something does happen, I'll serve as her ladyship's guard," Sova volunteered boldly, raising his hand. "Are you serious?" Robert asked, surprised. "Of course I am. What did I tell you yesterday? She doesn't seem as fussy as I thought." "I want to be on friendly terms with her," Sova answered, nonchalant. "Friendly terms? Calling her fussy? Wanting to have a friendly relationship with her? Those are impudent comments to make before his lordship," Robert reprimanded, tense. Zachary's scowl deepened as he looked at Sova. "She's our boss when his lordship's not around. Wouldn't it be smart to maintain a good relationship with her?" Sova argued calmly. "Man, I know you're a free citizen, but there are certain lines you shouldn't cross," Robert said, his frustration mounting. "And stop eating cookies on his lordship's desk." Zachary let out a long sigh as he turned his gaze back to the window. His thoughts wandered to Bianca, who was walking with some maids outside. Her words from their earlier conversation echoed in his mind. "I'll go with you. I want to go." He stood from the bed. "Very well. I'll have them prepare a set of travel gear for you," he said, heading for the door. "Dear," Bianca called, her voice making him pause as his hand touched the door handle. "I thank you for offering to take me to the capital, from the bottom of my heart," she said, her words sincere and calm. Zachary briefly met her gaze before replying, "Have a good night," and left the room. Zachary's gaze remained fixed on Bianca from his window. "She thanked me from the bottom of her heart," he thought, placing his fingers to his lips, a faint smile forming. A few months passed, and spring was quietly approaching Arno. Nicola ran swiftly, breath coming in quick gasps as he clutched the chest Bianca had given him. Nearby, two farmers were discussing while pushing a cart filled with hay. "Madame Bianca's been quiet lately, hasn't she?" one of the men said. "She was everywhere in the territory for a while, but not anymore." "I heard she's taken ill," the other man replied. "She said she was going to manage the household, but it must have been too much for her. Probably found it a bother and is now just lazing around in her room, feigning sickness." Nicola slowed his pace, walking quietly as he overheard them. "There's a rumor she's making something useless with a group of women she's gathered," the first man said, smiling. "As if women know how to do anything. They probably just sit around and gossip." Nicola's face twisted in disgust. He snapped, his voice rising as he yelled, "You guys don't know anything." His words startled the men, and their cart tipped over. "Rascal! How dare you speak that way to your elders? You good-for-nothing Chandler scoundrel," they shouted at him, but Nicola stuck out his tongue and ran off quickly. He hurried to the seamstress quarters. "Hello," he greeted as the seamstress opened the window. He placed the chest on the ledge. "Welcome, Nicola," the seamstress said warmly. "Hi, miss. Is Madame Bianca here?" Nicola asked. "Madame Bianca? She's not here yet," the seamstress replied. "My goodness, Marie. You came up with another new design, didn't you?" one of the seamstresses exclaimed cheerfully, admiring a piece Marie had made for Bianca. "The design came to me in the middle of the night, so I thought I'd give it a try," Marie explained softly, nursing her baby. "I find this work so much more enjoyable than weaving cloth. I feel proud when I come up with a pretty pattern and see the final product I made. Plus, I can breastfeed the baby while I work. Best of all, Madame rewards us well when she likes our output." "That's true," another seamstress joined in. "I didn't want to work with her at first because of all the awful rumors about her, but I can tell from looking at Yvonne that Madame takes good care of her people. You know that grey squirrel fur coat Yvonne wears? Madame gave it to her because it was sitting unworn in her closet. She said she'd give us even bigger rewards for nice designs while she's in the capital." "Well, I'm going to get first place with my patterns," Marie said, smiling. "You just wait and see." "I didn't realize when you were young, but you're quite the ambitious one, Marie," one of the seamstresses laughed. The lead seamstress turned to Nicola. "What brings you here, Nicola?" "I melted the candle I received last time and tried carving it differently. I wanted to show it to Madame before I took it over to head butler Vincent," he said, opening the chest to reveal a remarkable carving of an angel. "Oh my gosh. It's beautiful. You really are a genius, Nicola," the ladies exclaimed, praising him. "I want to show it to her as soon as possible. When do you think she'll get here?" Nicola asked, flushed with shyness. In the castle, Bianca rested in her chair, dozing off. As she slept, a memory from her previous life surfaced in her dream. She was seated on the floor, alone in a hallway. "Bianca," a voice called from behind her. "Who's there?" "Is it you, my lord?" she thought, turning around. "Oh dear, have you already forgotten my voice?" came the voice again, the man's tone familiar. "It can't be. Is it really you?" Bianca said, startled. "Yes, it's me. It's your beloved, Fernand," the man replied, adjusting his hair with a flirtatious smile. In the Blanchefort castle, young Bianca stood with her brother, dressed for marriage, as they observed her handmaiden, Jean, crying quietly. "Why are you crying, Jean? Are you upset that Bianca is getting married?" her brother asked gently. "I'm just so upset," Jean sniffed, blowing her nose into a handkerchief. "You could have married into a ducal family, Lady Bianca, but I can't believe you're marrying a destitute baron who only just acquired a title." Just then, Count Blanchefort entered the room, his gaze sharp. "How could you, my lord? How could you settle Lady Bianca's marriage like this?" Jean asked, her voice laced with anger. Bianca's father turned to her. "From this day forward, you're no longer a Blanchefort. You're part of the Arnaud household now. A lord's wife stays within her territory, she doesn't leave it. She protects it and stays until her last breath. Remember that, no matter what happens, don't even think about returning to Blanchefort." Bianca stood in a daze as her father's words echoed in her mind. She repeated them to herself later, when Zachary approached her in her previous life. "Now that you're part of the House of Arnaud, I shall take responsibility for you," he had told her. "I can't offer you immediate wealth and honor like Count Blanchefort, but I will take care of you to the best of my ability." Soon, rumors began circulating around Arnaud. "Have you heard? They say his lordship has a mistress, and that's why he and Madame Bianca haven't produced an heir yet. There's a rumor that she's been rejecting him. Do you think it's because of the mistress?" some maids whispered. "Madame is immature. She married so young. She's so frail, she probably can't bear many children. And she spends his lordship's hard-earned money like water. What makes her think she can protect him?" others murmured. In her room, Bianca was filled with sadness all day. She clenched her dress tightly, her thoughts drifting. "The Count briefly spends a night with me before he leaves for battle because it's his duty. But he has someone else he loves," she thought, her heart heavy. "That's right, Bianca. He loves another woman. So, there's no reason that you can't love another man," Fernand had said to her during those lonely days, embracing her from behind. "I'll embrace all your loneliness. Just let your body succumb to this feeling. Love me, Bianca." In her dream, Fernand embraced her, but Bianca's expression was grim. She shoved him off, anger flashing in her eyes. "Let go of me. You want me to love you?" she cried. "You told me to give myself to you, and I did. I let my body succumb to your love because you wanted me to." She paused, trembling with rage. "But when I lost everything, when I needed you most, you abandoned me." Fernand's voice was calm as he took her hand gently. "My goodness, Bianca, I thought you had found solace in me." Bianca withdrew her hand from his, her voice bitter. "Yes, I did find solace in you. But I made the mistake of thinking someone loved me, and that I loved him in return." She looked down, her thoughts turning. "When I think back on it now, I realize I should have done my duty, even if the Count loved someone else. If I'd known I would lose everything because of something as foolish as love, I never would have fallen in love in the first place." Bianca mumbled softly in her sleep, her words heavy with regret. Just then, a hand gently touched her, waking her with tears in her eyes. "Bianca, are you unwell?" came the familiar voice of her husband, Zachary, his face filled with concern. "It's the Count," Bianca thought, her heart sinking. "How long has he been here? He always appears when I'm at my lowest, but he never gives me what I truly need." She turned to look at Zachary, her gaze distant. "It's nothing. I'm fine," Bianca said quickly, drying her eyes and looking away. "What brings you here, my lord? Would you like to take a stroll with me?" Zachary asked politely, his tone soft. Bianca hesitated for a moment before nodding, and they soon found themselves outside the castle, walking side by side. Zachary moved with a deliberate pace, his long strides quickly outpacing Bianca. "Oh, for crying out loud. That man. Is he boasting about his long legs or what?" Bianca thought, frustration building up in her. Her steps quickened as she held her dress, trying to keep up with him. Madame Bianca and his lordship hadn't spent much time together in the past. She had always observed him from afar, and to her, he seemed like a distant, intimidating figure, an aloof, pretentious man. She had never had the chance to know him well, and he always seemed so unapproachable. Zachary, noticing her slowing down, stopped and waited for her to catch up. "Are we here?" she asked, catching up to him. "We need to go a bit further," he replied, his voice calm as he turned his head. "Then why did you stop?" Bianca thought, startled by his sudden pause. They resumed walking, but this time Zachary slowed his pace to match hers. "Oh, his strides have gotten shorter," Bianca thought, watching him carefully. "Is he trying to match my pace?" As they walked together, she noticed that his breathing was a little heavier than usual. Could it be? She wondered. Oh, he must have slowed down because he's out of breath. They walked a little further before Zachary paused again and pointed ahead. "We've arrived. Look over there," he said. "Huh." Bianca replied, looking up. Her eyes widened in surprise, and her cheeks flushed when she saw the white horse, tied to a tree and grazing calmly. "Is that?" she began, her voice trembling slightly, her heart racing. "Yes. That's the horse I promised you last winter," Zachary replied, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. They approached the horse, and Bianca stood still for a moment, uncertain. "My goodness. I wonder if it's okay to pet her," she thought, feeling a sense of awe. Gently, she reached out to touch the horse's snout. The animal remained calm, allowing her to stroke it gently. So gentle, she thought, amazed. She's such a docile creature that she stays put even when you don't tie her up. A feeling of gratitude and happiness washed over her as she stood there, marveling at the gift. The feeling of receiving a living creature as a gift goes beyond my wildest imagination. I don't think I can express in words just how happy I am, Bianca thought, her voice soft with emotion. Zachary watched her with surprise, noticing the genuine joy on her face. "I'm glad you like the horse," he said, his voice quieter now. Suddenly, without warning, Zachary reached forward, gently taking her hand. Bianca's face flushed, startled by his sudden proximity. My lord," she murmured, feeling a rush of heat in her cheeks. "Why are you suddenly so eager?" she thought, her heart fluttering with uncertainty. "I'm going to hold you for a moment," Zachary said, leaning forward. "What?" Bianca asked, her cheeks flushed. He gently held her by the waist and lifted her, causing her to let out a surprised scream. "Not even my father bounced me in the air as a child, so why is my husband doing it?" She thought in shock as he raised her carefully. "How is it? Is it too high? Does it scare you?" Zachary asked as he placed her on the horse's back. Huh? Oh, Bianca said, realizing she was now sitting on the horse. No, I'm not scared, she quickly assured him. That's good, he replied. I'll teach you how to ride a horse starting tomorrow. Thank you for the offer, but I don't want to take up your precious time, my lord. I did want to learn how to ride, but I can ask Vincent to get me a riding instructor, she told him. You're not taking up my time, Zachary insisted. I'm teaching you because I want to. I feel like I've missed out on too much over the years. His words caused Bianca's cheeks to flush, and she nodded hesitantly. Very well. So, my hands. When are you going to let them go? She asked, glancing at their still joined hands. Well, now that you're on the horse, Zachary said slowly, why don't you try holding the reins? She nodded quickly. After that, we can make a lap around the territory. Were you planning on going to where the seamstresses are gathered? Yes, I was. Then we shall head there, he said, taking the reins as he guided the horse gently. They walked in silence for a while. Maybe I remembered him as a big, scary man because I always had to look up to see his face, but when I see him from above, he looks gentler than I thought, Bianca mused. Gentler? Yeah, right. What am I thinking? She quickly turned her head away. May I ask you a question? Zachary said. What is it? She asked. Why don't you call me what you called me that day? He asked. What do you mean? What did I call you, my lord? She replied, unsure. Zachary was silent for a moment before turning his face slightly, as if hiding its redness. He then shifted the topic. So, this thing you're making with the seamstresses. I hear it's called lace. What is that? Bianca was surprised by his interest. He knows more about my work than I expected. Then again, Vinny or Gaspard probably reported all my doings, she thought. It's an item crafted with inexpensive materials, but the final product is beautiful and valuable. It will eventually reach beyond the continent and make an impact on the whole world, she explained. It will have a great impact. How are you so sure? Zachary asked, his gaze drawing hers. Oops. The Count doesn't know what will happen in the future, she thought, suddenly tense. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, if it were to come true, wouldn't it help Arno a great deal, she said, looking away. She thought of her father's cold look and continued, I saw your stables filled with horses, each worth as much as a house, so I'm not worried about that. It's just, if by any chance some misfortune were to befall the people around me, I need to have a great deal of my own power so that others cannot control me. The daughter of Count Blanchefort. Count Arno's wife. The mother of Count Arno's son. I want to be someone who can survive without relying on someone else's name. Just Bianca. I want to be strong as just Bianca, she said, her voice steady but firm. You need the strength that will allow you to be just you. That's an excellent mindset for a knight's wife, Zachary said, causing Bianca to blush. You don't need to praise me like that, she replied, turning away. This is all because we don't have an heir, she exclaimed. I still want to get pregnant as soon as possible. It's not exactly a time of peace with all these wars going on, but you don't seem concerned about a successor. No wonder I feel the need to have my own power to protect myself. Zachary frowned, listening intently. If you get pregnant right now, you'll be remembered only as the mother of the next Count Arno, rather than Bianca, the lace craftsman, he said. Isn't that how it's supposed to be? Bianca retorted. A noble wife is only looked after by her family of origin, her husband, or his heir. I can't help but be uneasy when my husband, who's supposed to take care of me, is out there on the front lines of a war, she added, her voice tinged with concern. Zachary stared at her, surprised by her honesty. I see, he said quietly. The present certainly isn't an ideal time, neither for the young aristocratic lady who must bear a child despite the risks of death, nor for the young knight who must step onto the battlefield, uncertain of where the next blow will come from. Bianca's thoughts drifted to a story she had heard in the past, the story of the second son of Viscount Hughes, who had run away from his household, cast out and determined to make his name from the ground up. The extraordinary knight who became Zachary de Arno. He had no vassals, only his own strength to protect his servant. Bianca realized that it wasn't a good time for either of them, the young knight or his young wife. Just like how I married into the house of Arno at a young age without knowing anything, Zachary must have stepped into the battlefield with little more than his resolve, she thought, as he gently guided the horse. My lord, she asked hesitantly, her hands gripping her dress. By any chance, were you worrying about me all these years? Zachary looked stunned, stammering slightly. he began, but their conversation was interrupted by Marie, who called from a distance, Nicola at her side. "Oh, my! Where did you get that horse, madam? Hurry over, madam. Nicola has been waiting for you this whole time," Marie called out. Zachary, who had been backing them, turned toward the sound, startling them both. "Huh? My lord. Is that you, Lord Arno? I apologize for not greeting you sooner. I thought you were a groom." Marie quickly explained, sounding apologetic. "Why did they have to come right now?" Bianca thought, her expression souring. "It looks like there are many people waiting for you," Zachary noted. "I shall take the horse to the stables." With that, he gently lifted Bianca back to her feet, away from the horse. "Oh, another thing. You'll bond with the horse much faster if you give her a name. Come up with a name for her," he said as he climbed onto the horse. "That's your first homework for your riding lesson," he added calmly before riding away. Bianca watched him leave, her face flushed. This was her 20th spring, and yet she had a feeling this spring would be different. Meanwhile, in the capital of Severin, Lajos, a man and a lady shared a secret moment in a secluded part of a garden. The lady moaned softly amidst their kiss. "My husband will be looking for me," she murmured. "Didn't I tell you to forget about your husband when you're with me?" The man, Prince Jacob, replied, planting more kisses on her as his hands reached into her dress. "Wait. Jacob," she suddenly gasped, halting the moment as she noticed an unfamiliar face nearby. The lady rushed off in a hurry. "Wait, my lady. It's all right." Prince Jacob called after her, but she was already gone. "She's so fast. Looks like I won't be able to play with her for too long. She's too much of a scaredy-cat," he muttered, a little disappointed as he remained seated. He then turned to the man who had interrupted his romantic moment, paying no mind to the lipstick stains on his cheeks. "Did you find out anything regarding the matter I tasked you with?" "Yes, Your Highness," the man replied. "Zachary de Arno will be coming to Lajos with his wife, according to his messenger." "How interesting," Prince Jacob said with a smile. "The wife of the Count of Blood and Iron is coming to Lajos? Something tells me this spring will be a little different," he added, wiping the lipstick traces from his face. At the time, His Majesty, the King of Severin, had 3 children. He and the first Queen Consort were parents to the eldest Prince Gautier and Princess Orderly, while Prince Jacob was born to the second Queen Consort. In Severin, hereditary succession through the eldest son was a long-standing custom, and Prince Gautier was widely regarded as the heir apparent to the throne. Prince Jacob stood in a corridor, waiting for a visitor. "Your Highness, Prince Jacob," Count Blanchefort greeted as he approached with his son. "Ah, it's been a while, Count Blanchefort," Jacob replied with a polite smile. "This is my son, Joachim," the Count said, introducing him as Joachim bowed respectfully. "I see. I heard something interesting recently, Count," Jacob began, his tone light yet pointed. "They say Count Arno will be bringing his wife on his visit to the capital this year. She's your daughter, isn't she? The girl you married off to that old itinerant knight at the age of 11? I remember my mother, who was a distant aunt to the late Countess Blanchefort, being quite concerned about the arrangement. Marrying into the household of an obscure baron. It must have been quite the shock for your family," Jacob remarked, his words cutting. Count Blanchefort's expression tightened, but he remained composed. "Those are harsh words, Your Highness," Joachim interjected, his voice rising in defense, but his father gestured for him to remain silent. "Her Majesty's concerns were understandable at the time," the Count replied calmly, "but that obscure baron is now one of the kingdom's most celebrated heroes. With Count Arno serving Severin, no nation would dare to challenge us, not even after Prince Gautier and his son ascend to the throne." "I see. I look forward to meeting this legendary hero in person," Jacob said, his smile unshaken. "And, of course, I would be delighted to see the Countess as well, should the opportunity arise." With that, he turned and left, leaving the Count and his son behind. "Humiliating you by mentioning Bianca is an insult to our family, father." Joachim fumed once they were alone. "We may belong to different factions, but does he not recall how my brother-in-law risked his life defending Severin from Aragon's invasions?" "Joachim," the Count said firmly, "return home and send a message to Arno. Tell them I wish to see Bianca as soon as she arrives in the capital." "Truly, father." Joachim's face lit up. "We'll finally see Bianca after 8 years. You even forbade me from sending her letters all this time. She is 20 now, living as a noblewoman in her own right. If she takes after her mother, she must have grown into a remarkable beauty, the Count said, a rare smile softening his features. Meanwhile, Bianca was struggling with her horse-riding lessons. As she dismounted, her legs trembled. "Madam, are you all right?" Yvonne asked nervously, noticing her pale face. "No, my thighs and rear are so chafed. I'm in so much pain," Bianca admitted, wobbling on her feet before she lost her balance. "Madam!" Yvonne cried out, rushing to catch her, but Zachary had already stepped in, lifting Bianca into his arms effortlessly. "It was a good idea for you to take up riding. As you improve, you'll gain strength and stamina," he said matter-of-factly. Bianca, red-faced, protested, "Put me down, my lord. I can walk on my own." "You're not heavy at all," Zachary said, brushing off her protests. "How could you be when all you eat each morning is a handful of olives?" Bianca froze, her cheeks flushing deeper. "What? That's only because I don't have an appetite in the morning." "And how do you even know what I eat?" she asked, looking away in embarrassment. "You'll naturally begin eating more as you spend time outdoors," he replied, unfazed. "Please put me down." "What will the servants think?" she pleaded, fidgeting in his arms. "You're on the verge of collapsing." "It's better this way," Zachary said firmly, his calm demeanor unshaken. "You're so stubborn." Bianca muttered, looking flustered. "And you're just as stubborn," Zachary replied with a rare hint of amusement. And so, Madame Bianca and Zachary spent time together until the day they were to depart for Lahoz. It wasn't enough to make up for the time they had spent apart, but it was still a chance for both of them to realize that their frowns didn't necessarily mean they despised each other. After several days of practice, Bianca's riding improved. "You're doing very well. Gently pull the reins toward the direction you wish to go," Zachary instructed as he rode a little ahead. Bianca followed his guidance, but noticed him glancing at her, causing her cheeks to flush. "My lord, what's on your mind right now?" she asked, curious. Zachary hesitated before speaking again. "I know I briefly asked about this before, but I've been wondering why you don't call me dear," he said, his gaze shy. Bianca blinked in surprise. "What? Why are you asking me that now?" she thought to herself, her cheeks flushing even more. She recalled the night she had addressed the Count with the term, realizing that Zachary must have remembered. "Well, it's dear like dear sir, the way you might start a letter," Bianca explained quickly, trying to dismiss the awkwardness. "It absolutely doesn't mean dear in any other sense. Besides, we haven't even." She trailed off, remembering their unconsummated marriage, and pulled her horse a little closer to Zachary. "I see," he said, his tone light. "I didn't mean to insist that you refer to me by any particular title. At the moment, you're my riding instructor, and I'm your pupil. We can sort out our titles later." Bianca, still flushed, nodded in agreement. "I'm sure we'll have time for that." Then, with a spark of competition, she added, "You just wait, instructor. Isabel and I will bring you and Noah down a peg or two." Her horse moved ahead of him. "Bring us down a peg or two." Zachary laughed lightly, clearly amused. "Oh, when the Count smiles like that, he looks so youthful," Bianca thought, watching his cheerful expression. "I accept your challenge," Zachary said, drawing closer and tapping her nose gently with his finger. "I hope that day comes soon," he added with a smile, causing her to blush further. As he continued teaching her to ride, the villagers looked on with curiosity from a distance. "Pull the reins like that, and the horse will halt." "Be careful," Zachary cautioned. "I only did that because I was startled," Bianca retorted, still flustered from his playful tap. Meanwhile, rumors spread about Madame Bianca's mysterious work with the seamstresses and her indulgence in lavish things like expensive beeswax candles. However, another rumor surfaced at the same time, about the shift in the dynamic between Bianca and Zachary. This sparked a quiet excitement in Arno, fueled by the hope that they might soon have an heir. Around this time, Zachary received a letter from the Blanchefort family. "The first letter you received from them was regarding your potential marriage to Madame Bianca," Vincent said, handing the letter to Zachary. "If I'm not mistaken, this is the second time you've received a letter bearing the Blanchefort crest." Zachary read the letter's contents. "They want to meet Bianca as soon as we arrive in Lahoz." Why now, after all these years, he wondered aloud. "Whatever the reason, I'll tell Bianca when the time is right. And I want you to remain silent on this matter." "I shall, my lord," Vincent replied. "But as always, Small misunderstandings led to unexpected problems. The incident unfolded the day before their departure to Lajos. That morning, Vincent observed Bianca standing outside the castle, visibly angry. "Madam, it's not what you think," Vincent pleaded, his tone anxious. Bianca's hand trembled with fury. "What do you mean by that? We're supposed to leave for Lajos tomorrow morning. So when were you going to speak to me about this, Vincent?" she asked, her voice tinged with frustration. Zachary sat by his window, reading a letter from Count Blanchefort. "Dear Lord Arnaud, all of Lajos is abuzz with excitement over your upcoming trip to the capital. The chance to greet the hero of Severin is spreading like wildfire. I hear the Countess will be accompanying you this time, and I would like to request the honor of being the first to greet you both upon your arrival in Lajos. Written for Gustave de Blanchefort by Joachim de Blanchefort." Zachary set the letter down, musing to himself. What an extremely businesslike letter to request to see his daughter. I wonder if Bianca's brother has the same temperament as Count Blanchefort, he thought, gazing out the window. His eyes landed on Bianca. Count Blanchefort never even asked how Bianca was doing before. According to Vincent, Bianca never sent or received letters from him. "I'm sure she's wanted to see her family for the past 8 years, but is it really the right thing to have her meet them?" Zachary continued watching her. "I won't be able to see Bianca's braided hair in an updo today, since we paused the riding lessons, but I think her long, unbound tresses suit her the best," he thought with a soft smile. It was the day before their departure to Lajos, and Arnaud Castle was bustling with final preparations for the journey. Madame Bianca had over 15 crates of belongings, which led to a request to reduce the number. She responded, "I've already cut it down a great deal, and this is the number I arrived at." Vincent, attempting to reason, said, "Even his lordship is only taking 8 chests." Bianca was taken aback. "How is that possible?" she exclaimed, ordering the crates to be opened. Hey, Vinny, is this truly all of his lordship's luggage?" Bianca asked, gazing at the contents of an open crate. "That's correct, but why do you ask?" Vincent replied, puzzled. Bianca raised an eyebrow, her tone turning serious. Be honest with me, Vinny. Is the Countship of Arnaud in dire financial straits?" she asked, causing Vincent to flinch. "Pardon? No, of course not." Vincent stammered. "Arnaud is quite wealthy. We even have a stable full of war horses. But this embroidery is so out of style, and he wore this vest when he was herding horses the other day. Even his furs are low quality." Bianca cried, rummaging through the clothes in frustration. "Madam, this isn't what you think. His lordship is a frugal man, and he enjoys wearing neat and simple clothes," Vincent explained. Bianca, however, was not convinced. "I don't want to hear it. This isn't neat and simple, it's unbearably rustic. It's a good thing I asked about his lordship's luggage. If I hadn't, when were you going to speak to me about this, Vincent? When would I have heard that his clothes were like rags?" She pointed at the pile of clothes angrily. Feeling exhausted, Bianca rested her head in her hands. Zachary's clothes, while certainly of high quality, were unsatisfactory to her, as she always kept up with the latest fashions. "What are all those trunks? They're not filled with rags, too, are they?" she demanded, pointing to a different pile of crates. Madam, those are your crates, which head butler Vincent was hoping to reduce from your luggage," Yvonne interjected gently. "Is that so?" Bianca responded, her mood lightening slightly. "Then those crates are fine. Take everything out of them, Vinny, and open all of his lordship's chests. I'll pick out the clothes for him to take," she instructed, causing Vincent to look even more tense. "Yes, I believe this is for the best. Perhaps I can use this opportunity to give my husband a complete style makeover with the latest pieces from the capital," Bianca said, her thoughts already drifting to the possibilities. "Pardon? Does that mean you'll be purchasing a whole new set of clothes for his lordship?" Vincent asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "He is the hero of blood and iron and the face of Severin before his my husband," Bianca replied, her tone firm. "But the clothes he owns right now make him look like a country bumpkin. Now that I think about it, I'm the one who has to accompany a man who looks like a provincial farmer. I refuse to be mocked because of his rustic style," she said, her voice growing more intense. "Yes, my lady," Vincent replied, shivering slightly. From his office, Zachary overheard their conversation and held back a laugh. Even the high and mighty Vincent gets whipped around by Bianca, he thought. I don't know what's going on out there, but I've never seen him at such a loss. Sova? Zachary thought as he watched his knight approach Bianca. He had mentioned before that he wanted to be on good terms with her. What is he saying to her? Zachary wondered, observing him smiling as he approached. You want me to give you his lordship's clothes? Bianca asked Sova. Yes, madam. If you're planning on discarding them anyway, why not give them to me? Good fabric is usually recycled into other clothes. Sova replied. His lordship is quite large. Do you think these will fit you? She asked him. Well, I'm bigger than our small friend Robert, and Gaspard is much bigger. I'd say I'm the one who's closest in size to his lordship, he explained. Very well. You may take what you need, Bianca told him. Woohoo! Thank you, my lady. Sova exclaimed happily. I'll finish organizing the military camp cargo as quickly as I can and come back for the clothes. He ran off excitedly. Bianca sighed, rubbing her temples. I feel so exhausted every time I have a conversation with him, she thought. I'll rest for a bit and rearrange my luggage too. Not that there's anything else to take out. She looked up just then, catching Zachary's gaze. It's the Count. How long was he watching? Her face flushed. Well, I've been seeing him almost daily, but seeing him like this is kind of pleasant too, she thought, her gaze lingering on him. But just as quickly, he stepped away from the window, ducking down. Huh? What the? I thought our eyes met. Was I mistaken? She wondered, feeling unsure. Zachary sat back down, his face flushed. That startled me. I didn't think our eyes would meet like that. Look at me, a full-grown man peeping at my wife. What if she's displeased that I was peeping at her? He thought, holding his head in his hands, still feeling flustered. When Bianca and Zachary first got married, he couldn't even get close to her without making her cry, even when their eyes met. At the time, he had no idea how to deal with his young bride, and his aloofness likely played a role in keeping them apart. But now, Bianca met his eyes on her own accord and even smiled at him from time to time. Zachary felt a strange discomfort whenever he thought about men like Gaspard, who accompanied her for her safety, or Sova, who approached her so openly. These feelings had only begun to arise after Bianca started smiling at him. This marriage had ensured his personal success and the safety of the kingdom, so he was willing to endure criticism about his marriage of convenience with a young woman. He had been fine with a superficial relationship between them. But now, he wasn't so sure when or why that perfunctory relationship had started to bother him. He recalled Bianca's question during their horse riding lessons. By any chance, were you worrying about me all these years? She had asked. He used to feel sorry for her, caught up in the machinations of adults at such a young age. But now, he found himself wishing only that Bianca wouldn't get hurt. That emotion was tinged with a treacherous gratitude for the circumstances that had swept her into his life, he thought, sinking down on the floor, still holding his head. The next morning, preparations for their journey were complete. Gaspard helped Bianca into her carriage. She paused as she stepped inside, watching Zachary as he spoke with Vincent. The Count seems quite busy. I wanted to ask him if he truly didn't see me wave at him yesterday, she thought before settling into her carriage. As she got inside, Bianca wondered if she would ever get the chance to speak to Zachary during the long, boring trip ahead. Even then, she had no idea that the Wheel of Fortune, which would soon turn her life upside down, had already begun its slow, ponderous revolution. The city gates were lowered, and the knights gently rode their horses, leading the carriages. Zachary stepped out first, leading the way. Let us depart to Lahoz, he called, signaling the start of the journey. Thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure. If you enjoyed what you watched, please consider liking, subscribing, and ringing that notification bell. Your comments mean the world to us and help us improve. The next episode promises even more excitement and unexpected twists, so stay tuned as we embark on this thrilling journey together. Keep the anticipation alive, and we'll catch you in the next episode.